Chapter 12 of Ruth. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Cynthia Lyons. Ruth by Elizabeth Cleghorn Gaskell. Chapter 12. Losing Sight of the Welsh Mountains. Miss Benson continued in an undecided state of mind for the 2 next days, but on the third, as they sat at breakfast, she began to speak to her brother. "That young creature's name is Ruth Hilton." "Indeed, how did you find it out?" "From herself, of course. She is much stronger. I slept with her last night, and I was aware she was awake long before I liked to speak. But at last I began. I don't know what I said, or how it went on, but I think it was a little relief to her to tell me something about herself. She sobbed and cried to herself. I think she is asleep now." "Tell me what she said about herself." "Oh, it was really very little. It was evidently a most painful subject. She is an orphan, without brother or sister, and with a guardian, whom, I think, she said, she never saw but once. He apprenticed her, after her father's death, to a dressmaker. This Mr. Bellingham got acquainted with her, and they used to meet on Sunday afternoons. One day they were late, lingering on the road, when the dressmaker came up by accident. She seems to have been very angry, and not unnaturally so. The girl took fright at her threats, and the lover persuaded her to go off with him to London, there and then. Last May, I think it was. That's all." "Did she express any sorrow for her error?" "No, not in words, but her voice was broken with sobs, though she tried to make it steady. After a while she began to talk about her baby, but shyly, and with much hesitation. She asked me how much I thought she could earn as a dressmaker, by working very, very hard, and that brought us round to her child. I thought of what you had said, Thurston, and I tried to speak to her as you wished me. I am not sure if it was right. I am doubtful in my own mind still." "Don't be doubtful, Faith, dear Faith. I thank you for your kindness." "There is really nothing to thank me for. It is almost impossible to help being kind to her. There is something so meek and gentle about her, so patient and so grateful." "What does she think of doing?" "Poor child, she thinks of taking lodgings, very cheap ones, she says. There she means to work night and day, to earn enough for her child. For she said to me, with such pretty earnestness, 'It must never know want. Whatever I do, I have deserved suffering, but it will be such a little innocent darling.' Her utmost earnings would not be more than 7 or 8 shillings a week, I'm afraid. And then she is so young and so pretty. There is that £50 Mrs. Morgan brought me, and those 2 letters. Does she know about them yet?" "No, I did not like to tell her till she is a little stronger. Oh, Thurston, I wish there was not this prospect of a child. I cannot help it, I do. I could see a way in which we might help her, if it were not for that." "How do you mean?" "Oh, it's no use thinking of it as it is. Or else we might have taken her home with us, and kept her till she had got a little dressmaking in the congregation. But for this meddlesome child, that spoils everything. You must let me grumble to you, Thurston. I was very good to her, and spoke as tenderly and respectfully of the little thing as if it were the Queen's, and born in lawful matrimony." "That's right, my dear Faith. Grumble away to me, if you like. I'll forgive you, for the kind thought of taking her home with us. But do you think her situation is an insuperable objection?" "Why, Thurston, it's so insuperable. It puts it quite out of the question." "How? That's only repeating your objection. Why is it out of the question?" "If there had been no child coming, we might have called her by her right name, Miss Hilton. That's one thing. Then Another is, the baby in our house? Why, Sally would go distraught. Never mind Sally. If she were an orphan relation of our own, left widowed, said he, pausing as if in doubt, you yourself suggested she should be considered as a widow for the child's sake. I am only taking up your ideas, dear Faith. I respect you for thinking of taking her home. It is just what we ought to do. Thank you for reminding me of my duty. Nay, it was only a passing thought. Think of Mr. Bradshaw. Oh, I tremble at the thought of his grim displeasure. We must think of a higher than Mr. Bradshaw. I own I should be a very coward if he knew. He is so severe, so inflexible. But after all, he sees so little of us. He never comes to tea, you know, but is always engaged when Mrs. Bradshaw comes. I don't think he knows of what our household consists. Not know Sally? Oh, yes, but he does. He asked Mrs. Bradshaw one day if she knew what wages we gave her, and said we might get a far more efficient and younger servant for the money. And, speaking about money, think what our expenses would be if we took her home for the next 6 months. That consideration was a puzzling one, and both sat silent and perplexed for a time. Miss Benson was as sorrowful as her brother, for she was becoming as anxious as he was to find it possible that her plan could be carried out. "There's the £50," said he, with a sigh of reluctance at the idea. "Yes, there's the £50," echoed his sister, with the same sadness in her tone. "I suppose it is hers." "I suppose it is, and being so, we must not think who gave it to her. It will defray her expenses. I am very sorry, but I think we must take it." "It would never do to apply to him under the present circumstances," said Miss Benson, in a hesitating manner. "No, that we won't," said her brother decisively. "If she consents to let us take care of her, we will never let her stoop to request anything from him, even for his child. She can live on bread and water. We can all live on bread and water, rather than that. Then I will speak to her and propose the plan. Oh, Thurstan, from a child you could persuade me to anything. I hope I am doing right. However much I oppose you at first, I am sure to yield soon, almost in proportion to my violence at first. I think I am very weak." "No, not in this instance. We are both right. I, in the way in which the child ought to be viewed. You, dear good Faith, for thinking of taking her home with us. God bless you, dear, for it." When Ruth began to sit up, and the strange, new, delicious prospect of becoming a mother seemed to give her some mysterious source of strength, so that her recovery was rapid and swift from that time, Miss Benson brought her the letters and the bank note. "Do you recollect receiving this letter, Ruth?" asked she, with grave gentleness. Ruth changed colour, and took it and read it again, without making any reply to Miss Benson. Then she sighed, and thought a while, and then took up and read the second note, the note which Mrs. Bellingham had sent to Mr. Benson in answer to his. After that she took up the bank note and turned it round and round, but not as if she saw it. Miss Benson noticed that her fingers trembled sadly, and that her lips were quivering for some time before she spoke. "If you please, Miss Benson, I should like to return this money." "Why, my dear?" "I have a strong feeling against taking it." "While he," said she, deeply blushing, and letting her large white lids drop down and veil her eyes, "loved me, he gave me many things. My watch. Oh, many things. And I took them from him gladly and thankfully, because he loved me. For I would have given him anything, and I thought of them as signs of love. But this money pains my heart. He has left off loving me, and has gone away. This money seems, oh, Miss Benson, it seems as if he could comfort me for being forsaken